Hi, this is Frugus Raid, and I'm on a clanmate's account today. I'm going to do a quick video to show off the work that I did on his team. He's actually got a really good account in terms of the champions. Does a great job on dungeon runs. He runs a 40-second dragon and a 25-second spider. I mean, he's got a pretty good setup all in all for farming. However, his clan boss team I think was topped out in the mid 40s, maybe upper 40s, and so and he ran two different teams. He runs one team for Ultra Nightmare, and then he runs like a double counterattack team for Nightmare, and just it's not nearly as convenient as if it was one team setup. So I've gone through, I spent a lot of time going through some of his champions and re-gearing them. I tried a few different comps. Ultimately, what I decided on is Kreela, Vizier, and Draco. So these guys, of course, some of the most well-known and powerful champions in the game. On the slow double Maneater, um, Draco isn't actually one of the best champions normally. Not if you want a one key, and the reason is because his uptime is without some sort of assistance is not 100% on defense down and weaken. So the one thing about the slow double Maneater comps is that you really have to hit hard because you're on a 1-to-1 ratio with the clan boss unless you have counterattack, ally attack, etc. And since most of these champions, like Draco, a a 2-turn defense down and weaken, same with Razin, you really you're going to go at least one turn without this up, and that starts to kill your damage output, truthfully. So to counter this, I'm going to use a debuff extender. I tried this with Septimus, um, and the damage was in the 50s. Septimus he hits harder for sure, but his uptime isn't as high. So we're going to try it with Vizier, and we'll see how we do. The total stats I've got Vizier build at 4,000, 173, and 200% crit. The debuff accuracy I didn't really touch. That was already built like that. He's in the defense tree. We'll move into Kreela. Kreela I built in the support tree for higher uptime on her buffs, and also for Cycle of Magic. And she's built out around 4K and 240% crit. I'm not worrying about crit capping any of these champs because of the fact that Kreela will have an uptime that's fairly high on her increased crit rate. If you look at her speed, it's 165. So I have 173 Vizier, 165 Kreela, and now we're going to look at Draco. I've got him at 177. He's at just under 4,800 attack. There's room to grow this for sure. 255, 254 crit damage, and 270 accuracy. Again, solid stats, not spectacular. There's room to grow here as well. And I've got the two Maneaters. These are at the typical slow double Maneater speeds. This is 215. 2300, there's a lot of room to improve on the crit rate and crit damage with him. If you look at his overall, he is using speed, so that's like 214 point something, 0.8 or something, I don't know. He's maybe 214.5 even. So there's certainly room to improve on his damage output, but he's the right speed, and that's the only thing that truly matters for this test. Likewise, I have another Maneater here. This guy is at 2,500 attack. There's a lot of room to grow. He's got good crit damage. I could probably translate some of that into attack with him right now. But again, he's at the right speeds, which is the most important thing. I've got him at 219.5. Again, he has 2 speed sets on, so his true speed is going to be actually off a little bit from what you see. So I'm going to jump into the setup here, and let's do this with Kreela. $65, 173, 177. So we have 219.52, 214.76, 177, 173, and 164 with the buffs. So again, we'll just check this out before we start. There's, no, this is Nightmare. Let's try this for Ultra Nightmare. For Ultra Nightmare, there's starting turn 6, you're staying in that, so that looks good. Turn 5, the only person who's vulnerable is Vizier to the stun. That's fine. Nobody's vulnerable turn 2. I take that back. The second Maneater is. That's okay too. Alright, so this looks good from a setup. I will go back to the Nightmare. The Nightmare, you can see, it looks like turn 3 or turn 5, this is going to be autoable. Because I'm going to pull Maneater's A3 up 1 to account for keeping debuffs off, which is what you're typically doing in an affinity setup. I'm probably going to manual this until the end of turn 5. I think that works good anyway, because if I'm not mistaken, Draco, or not Draco, Vizier will require that. So let's go ahead and take this and give it a try. Let's see if we can find Kreela. Kreela. There we are. So this setup, we'll just start out with the A2s. I'm going to go ahead and get defense and weaken up. Let's start getting Vizier working on those. Get Kreela to get the extra crit up. This is turn 1, so we'll go ahead and cast Maneater 1's A3. Get the poisons out. Alright, get those buffed up a little bit. Now we're going to get an ally attack in here. Oh, these are looking beautiful now. That's what I like to see. Now, I've got this set up in a way that's maybe just a hair riskier than it has to be, because I've got these with real low accuracy, which in theory, the attack down will make this a much less harrowing in the setup phase. But the trade-off is with Vizier, we can get an extra spot provided they don't accidentally end up hitting it. All right, and we made it. Okay, so now we've made it to turn 6. This is looking real good. And we're now unkillable. I'm going to go ahead and maybe run this one more turn just to make sure that we get those poisons with a few more debuffs before Vizier starts running wild using his own other abilities. Oh, that looks so much nicer right there. Let's just go ahead and see if we can get one more. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and hit auto. So this should do real solid damage once it's built out. It's got the whole set of bars full. Draco can hit super hard with this. We'll get some extra attacks from Kreela, and Vizier should, at this point, make sure that we're up 100% of the time on all the on all of the debuffs that are out there, and so we're gonna expect this to do really well. This really underscores how powerful the ally attack, counter attack, and debuff extenders are on any one-to-one team. And the slow double Maneater is no difference. It has the same vulnerabilities that other one-to-one teams have in terms of debuffs falling off, in terms of losing potential damage opportunities. And in a one-to-one comp, Vizier is just is amazing. I mean, he's as powerful as you can possibly have for a one-to-one comp setup. And I mean, you can see that he's just ensuring that all these debuffs stay on, and the damage output is super consistent from turn to turn. Otherwise, you can see their damage is all super low here. Most of them aren't even getting enough that they really counterattack when they get hit, which is too bad, but they do get the extra 5% damage from being below 50% all the time. So that's definitely a mastery that is worthwhile. I'm going to go ahead and just let this run, and I will come back when it's done, and I'll just go ahead and set this up. I'll run it on Nightmare then, with perhaps with Septimus instead. I don't expect it'll be quite as good because Septimus doesn't keep the debuffs up nearly like Vizier does, but it's a weak affinity for Vizier, and I love Septimus, so we'll try that out, and we'll show you how that one does too. Alright, you can see we're just about there. This is not going to be a one key, but this is going to do really good damage. You can see this has a lot of potential. I think the chances are there that we can probably get this to a one key with a few changes to team setups. I think we can probably get some guys into counterattack, maybe, improve a little extra damage there, maybe improve some of the gear so that there's a little more attack and crit damage, and trade off a little of the crit rating. There's definitely potential here to turn this into a one key. It's a pretty sweet setup, really, and it only can get better the more you run it. These Maneaters, a lot of room to grow there. Clearly Draco's doing the lion's share of the work, with Vizier keeping his debuffs up 100% of the time. Just really a very sweet setup. I'm going to go ahead and take this, and we're going to run it now on Nightmare. As I said, I like Septimus, so instead of Vizier, we're going to try the same thing with Septimus. And before I do this, maybe I'll just real quickly bounce out and I will show you Septimus. So he is set up in the same speed range as Vizier. He's at 172. I believe that should work fine at this speed. His attack is a little bit on the low end, but all in all, he's built pretty well. He's really built maybe more for Spider, with one difference being that he is running War Master, which I would never run on a dungeon hitter, since the reduced defense possibilities are much better. It's also important to note right now this is at gold 3, so there's maybe you could get a little more damage out of that as well. Alright, so let's go ahead and swap him in, and we'll start this out. Now, one thing you're going to see right away is the uptime of Septimus on buffs is nowhere like Vizier. I mean, Septimus is an amazing champion in his own right. He does just terrific damage. I mean, in all cases, he does really good damage, better than most, but he does not do nearly the job that Vizier does keeping debuffs up. So we're going to hopefully rely on binding glow to do a little bit of the extra work to keep these debuffs going. But so far I have not seen a single proc of his increased debuffs. Alright, so you can see this Maneater got stunned. It's not going to affect anything in the run. I'm going to go ahead and run this guy once, and then he'll run the last of turn 3, and then really I can put this on auto at that point if I want to. Okay, there, he finally increased it once. I'm going to, because I ran this guy once on turn 1, I think he's probably back on track for it since he got stunned. It does look like he is, but I'm going to just go ahead and manual this anyway to make sure that it's still good. I mean, that's the upside of Septimus. Hitting for 400,000 damage on the clan boss is just sweet. So now we are on turn 5. At this point in time, this is full auto. Now the hope would be that we can keep getting enough debuff extensions out of this. I don't think it's going to happen. What you're probably going to end up seeing is things falling off. And that will make a big impact on the overall damage. Still, again, you're going to see this is going to be a high damage output. I expect this will be, of course, easily one keying Nightmare, and I'm expecting still to see maybe 60 million overall damage. So we'll let this run for a while, and I will come back again when it's getting close to the end, and we'll look at how it did. Okay, we're at turn 45, and you can see that this is looking like it's going to come out at or around the same damage that I got on Ultra Nightmare with Vizier. This is kind of illustrates the power of a consistent debuff extender on 1-to-1 affinity or 1-to-1 turn ratio teams, and how important it is to have other ways to get this. Where I've seen a single Septimus do good is with a counterattacker and using his own counterattack, or with a counterattack and ally attack both. He's still spotty. I mean, that having a 40% chance just isn't high enough all in all. But as you can see, he does great damage. His damage output far exceeds Vizier's, but he just isn't quite good enough in terms of his overall debuff extension, and as a result, Vizier outperforms him in terms of this type of setup. And I have to carefully emphasize that, because I think Septimus is a great champ for clan boss, and I think there are certainly some situations where he is far better than Vizier, but in these situations where your overall damage is highly dependent on having attack, on having defense down and weaken up, he is not as good as Vizier in this situation, just simply because too often he doesn't extend the debuffs and they fall off. Again, I could probably show you a Nightmare run with Vizier on weak affinity, and my guess is the damage output would equal that. It probably would not exceed it, but I would guess that it would equal that, mainly because Vizier on weak affinity would miss some, and Ossel he would weak hit, so his total damage would be quite a bit lower, but I would expect Draco's damage to be quite a bit higher. Um, Again, this is just an interesting anomaly. This wasn't really what I aimed to show you. I did want to show you using both debuff extenders, and it's a team setup I really enjoy. So I wanted to just kind of show off some things I was able to do with it on Guns' account, and I hope this has been entertaining to you. And as always, if you have questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the messages below, or you can reach out on our Discord. Have a great day.